Sir, we'll wait for 3-4 minutes. People are joining right now. So
Right, sir. Fine.
we'll wait for 3 minutes, sir. 3-4
Sure,
minutes.
sure.
Thank you, sir.
I'm in Nagpur. Just have reached Nagpur. Tomorrow we have got a program on the
Okay.
Agricultural cost management. You know, we
Yes,
are
sir.
connecting
Yes.
with the FPOs. We
Yes,
are
sir.
connecting with the FPOs, and Honorable Minister Nitin Gadkari ji is going to inaugurate this program at
Oh,
Nagpur.
okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
tomorrow at 9:15 we shall start the program, and we have got continuous. It would be up to 5 p.m. We'll be discussing on the various aspects on the cost sheets. How the agricultural cost sheet can be taken into considerations, because our Honorable Finance Minister has requested us to develop some pilot, paper study. So we are we have come out with a this move with the Indian Statistical Institute.
Okay.
With them, that we are actually going for some pilot study on various certain crops, especially, and we have taken 5 or 6 states into consideration.
Okay.
So that I think this is one of the first of its kind by any professional institute, sir.
Yeah.
People are all thinking for audits and others, but we go beyond audit, and that is our message to our professionals, CMA fraternity.
Yeah. I think we can start. Other people may join in the meantime. So good evening and welcome to all the guests and the participants to this workshop on valuation being jointly organized by ICMAI Registered Valuers Organization and Banking, Financial Services and Insurance Board of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to invite and have with us Mr. Rohit Joshi, General Manager Credit from Indian Bank, who is the chief guest of today's program, and also our special guest, CMA Chitranjan Chattopadhyay, who is the chairman of Banking and Financial Services Insurance Board. We also take pleasure in welcoming Dr. J.D. Sharma, who was retired as a director from a bank and is currently the chairman of Insolvency Professional Agency of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. And we're also going to have deliberations from, and we heartily welcome Dr. S. Venkataraman, retired Chief General Manager from State Bank of India, and also Mr. Kullur Subramanya Ayadurai, Registered Valuer, and Mr. B.D. Sharma, Registered Valuer. We are all going to discuss today and have deliberations on primarily two different aspects, both with the pivot at the bank. One is valuation under IBC, that is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court. And the second is the role and importance of valuation for the credit management in the banks. As we all know, all economic and financial decisions are based upon valuation. And valuation is mandated under various laws, income tax, SEBI regulations, FEMA regulations, Competition Commission of India, Mergers and Acquisitions, IBC, Companies Act. And therefore, the government has decided to have a separate cadre of registered valuers, hardcore professionals to carry out valuation in various domains. And this was as a result of a provision being carried under Section 247 of the Companies Act 2013. ICMAI Registered Valuers Organization is entrusted with the job of enrolling registered members, registered valuers, looking at their professional development, their monitoring, grievance handling, and discipline, and providing a cadre of specialized registered valuers to the whole universe and to the market for carrying out valuation of different assets. Of course, we know valuation is not a perfect science. A valuer, what he does essentially is provides an estimate of the value of potential economic benefits that an asset can generate in future. It's only an estimate of potential economic benefits that probably an asset can generate going forward into future. And this becomes the basis of deciding whether a company is going to be rescued under IBC or the company needs to be pushed into liquidation. And similarly, from the banker's perspective, various decisions that the banker takes for granting of term loans, for granting of credit facilities, and for many other things, valuation is the pivot around which the whole decision-making process ultimately revolves. So we jointly thought, discussed with CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay sir, and we jointly thought that we could probably organize a joint program which would be really, really useful for the participants to get perspectives from the bankers' angle as well as from the registered valuers' angle, so that we are able to bring them onto a common wavelength so that it is beneficial for both the fraternities, the bankers, as well as the registered valuers. So good evening and welcome once again. Without taking much of your time, I would first invite and request CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay sir, Chairman of Banking, Financial Services and Insurance Board of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, to deliver his special address on this occasion. CMA Chittaranjan Chattopadhyay sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. CMA S.K. Gupta, our Managing Director of ICMI RVO. Very respected chief guest of this occasion today, our Sri Rohit Rishiji, General Manager of Indian Bank, who has always been kind enough. Whenever we have approached him, he has given his time for us. He has provided many informations to us. In fact, in our banking month last year, he was one of the speakers who has unfolded many areas for the CMAs. And I just want to mention everybody here that he's one of the persons who has given us the advice, who has advised us for coming out with a book on infrastructure financing. And since he was very much, he was appreciative enough for our one book during our COVID period on MSME, Aid Memory on Lending to Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, including restructuring of MSME credit. And it is his advice. It has given us huge, and rather I should say we have been felt enthused, and ultimately we came out with a robust handbook on infrastructure financing, and which has been applauded by many of the giants of the infrastructure sectors, including banks, for our such effort. Thank you, sir. You have really, we are grateful to you. You have again come to our platform today, and I am sure our all participants and all the speakers also on this occasion, they will also be very much getting many advice from you today. And my other speakers here and all the esteemed members, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, this Dr. Gupta has just told you that why we are holding this program. But before that, I just want to mention some of the points from the Banking Financial Service Insurance Board, why we are feeling so much interested to connect with the Banking Financial Service Insurance Board and these valuers. Because being a banker, I understand that the credit risk is one of the very important risks for the banks. Many risks are there. Banks are every day they are encountering, they are mitigating various risks. And Indian banks are really, it can be told in the world that they can be cited as the most success story, the risk mitigations. And here the credit risk, one of the most important, that is default risk, one of the very important risks for the credit. These are all, embracing the whole credit risk. And, the credit risk actually, when the lenders, extended loans are extended to the borrowers based on the business or the individual's ability to service future payment obligations, all time there should be counterparty, always risk is there. But, whenever as an insolvency professional, we should also understand the real, gamuts of the credits, and what are the really how the insolvency professional should look into this matter. Because we could understand during this period of COVID, we could understand many of the suggestions came from our MSME, our BFSI sector to our government also, that how to help the MSME sectors to grow in this particular time. And their restructuring process, their, whatever rehabilitation package has been declared. But ultimately, at the everyone that the prepackaged insolvency, this matter has been very much accepted by the government in such a way that it has helped the many MSMEs for growing their business in this very pandemic time. I know some of the banks, they have come out with, including Indian banks have got a great, they have come out with certain programs to help the MSMEs. That we'll be listening from Rohit, this is her, that how Indian bank help the bankers. But when as an insolvency professional, we should not only look for post-mortem issues. We have to understand the nitty-gritty of the credit, because one of the very important as RVO, many of the RVOs, they are also linked with the insolvency professionals for valuations. But they should know the 5 C's of credit, which is very helpful very much helpful to better understand credit risk and credit analysis. These 5 C's of credit, as you know, these are these are all capital, one of the capacity, capital, then, they are, what is the current situation is there. In fact, many of the issues, when we talk about the character, when you talk about the capacity, when you talk about the capital, when you talk about the collateral, when you talk about the conditions, so all these issues are to be also understood by our professionals, whether it is RBO, whether it is IPA. But again, the valuation aspect, especially when you come to the collateral, that is one of the very, very important issue for banks, because collateral security is a very important part of structuring loans to mitigate credit risk. It is critical to understand what assets are what, where they are located, how easily the title can be transferred, and what appropriate LTVs are, among other things. That's very important for the collaterals. So this collateral value, loan to value ratio, these are all very important issues.
2 weeks, especially. Concentrated on.
I think some sound is coming.
That has been muted now. Please carry on.
So this loan to value ratio, these are all important issue, and our RVO, they should also understand that bank, whenever they are going for any credit appraisal, they are, for the collateral issue, they are considering the valuations of the assets, and their valuation of the assets is one of the main frame for credit decisions. And to take a credit decisions, whenever RVO, now as per Act, IBBI and the Companies Act has mandated that this valuers will be from this registered valuer, and here ICMI, RBO, those who are registered valuer, they have got a great role to play, and they have to play the role for the banks also, because banks will have a trust on the valuers. Many of the issues, Rohit sir is here, he can also deliberate upon this, that many of the valuers, valuation process has differed, their value in terms of the quantum has differed in such a way. Ultimately, bank had to take third parties view. Bank also, there are always up to many, after a threshold limit, valuation has to be done by 2 valuers, 2 approved valuers by the banks. But what are the criteria for the valuations? What are the aspects they should look into? A valuer may be going for a valuation of tea garden. Valuer may be going for a valuation of one plant. But the valuer's perspective has to be understood from a different angle. We are very much delighted to tell you that Dr. Gupta, with his continuous effort, he has been already coming out with several guidelines on the valuations. We have come out with a valuation guidelines for the tea estates. That is a great endeavor from the part of our RBO. I congratulate RBO, our CEO or MD. And another aspects, I'm very happy to tell you, the way we are coming out with the monthly publications, quarterly publications, monthly publications from RBO, that is also a great, and I think this is the only institute who are coming out with this sort of publications for the benefit of the valuers. And sir, Rohit sir, I just want to mention here that today's session, we'll be learning it from you, and we shall be taking feedback from all the participants, and in what directions we should continuously do it. And as a chairman of the BFSI board, I request you that our RVO, those who are already registered, we have a panel RVO, those who are registered valuers we have with us, we will forward it to you. And I'm sure these registered valuers will give you the confidence, it will repose confidence upon you that these valuers will be definitely give that sort of valuation for your banking assets, because most important thing is the financial assets, as also plant, machinery, every assets, our valuers are there. So from RBO, we shall be continuously helping the banks to connect you with our valuers, so that valuer, that these valuers of IPM, they are under Ministry of Corporate Affairs, have come out with this, this Companies Act, where it has been told that the registered valuers has to be deployed by the organizations. I will be also looking for listening from you, that whether we are in the bank, we are empaneling the valuers from the RVOs, or we are empaneling from the others. That we also want to know from you, because accordingly, we shall take our decisions, and we shall formalize we shall have a total discussions in our RVO board, how to include ourselves and how to connect with the bankers, so that bankers get benefit and we shall also get benefit. So with this, and let me tell you one thing, sir, our programs all programs in this particular RVO program or whatever BFSI program, we are all connecting with the YouTube. So this program will be available to all YouTube. Yes, those who are our participants. We have got 61,000 viewers in YouTube. So today's program will definitely give a wide coverage and wide perception about the connecting of valuers and the bankers, and how the valuers should help the bankers, and how the bankers can take help from the valuers. So this way, this bridging of this will be take place through this program. I am very much grateful that today this program has been done at the auspices of our ICMA RVO. And I am again conveying my gratefulness to my Dr. J.D. Sharma, who happens to be another very important personality in our IPA. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we shall be having our very knowledgeable sessions along with these all speakers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, CMA Chitranjan Chattopadhyay, sir, for setting the pace and the base for the program for deliberations to follow. Thank you so very much for joining hands with ICMA RBO and always providing your very candid feedback as well as guidance and supervision for our continuing activities. We shall certainly work under your guidance to take ICMA RBO to new heights and connecting with the banking and financial institution community in this country as well as abroad. Thank you so much, sir. I would now request our chief guest, Mr. Rohit Rishi, who is the General Manager, Indian Bank, to kindly deliver his keynote address. But before that, I would like to present a brief synopsis of profile of Shri Rohit Rishi, sir. Shri Rohit Rishi, sir, is currently managing over 450 branches spanning 6 zones across the states of Maharashtra and Gujarat, with business to the tune of rupees 1 lakh crores approximately. He joined the Indian Bank in 1995 and has been actively involved in credit management throughout his career. His key achievements include mobilization and monitoring of corporate credit with average branch business to the tune of rupees 11,000 crores. Overall business development, monitoring and branch administration of the largest branch of the bank with total business of around 25,000 crores. Field General Manager, Bengaluru, handling total business to the tune of approximately 45,000 crores across Karnataka and Kerala. He has also been very, very deeply involved in policy formulation for growth and monitoring of MSME and mid-corporate sector, product development, setting up of MSME and mid-corporate vertical, in coordination with RBI and meeting Government of India and RBI targets in the MSME sector. He is highly reputed as a professional in the organization for his credit management, leadership skills, and cultivating performance-oriented and high delivery teams in the banks. Sir, we are honored and privileged to have you today with us as the chief guest, and we are eagerly looking forward to your words of wisdom on this occasion. I hand over the mic to Mr. Rohit Rishi, sir, please.
Respected Dr. S.K. Gupta, CMA Chitranjan Chattopadhyay ji, participants in the program, very good evening to all, and thank you very much for the introduction. It's always a pleasure and honor for me to be a part of your programs. The Institute is doing human service as far as credit development, credit culture, credit monitoring is concerned. I did go through the book on infrastructure lending and MSME lending. They are very useful tools which anybody can use, whether it's banker or CMA or chartered accountant, anybody. So I put on record my appreciation for the efforts that the Institute is doing under the guidance of Chitranjan Chattopadhyay ji and Dr. Gupta. I wish all the best to this program. And I'm really delighted to be a part of this, though it came at a short notice, but it's always a pleasure and honor for me. As you have very briefly told, and you have set the tone for these discussions to follow, bankers are in fact jacks of all trades, masters of none. That is a characteristic of bankers, because we handle projects right from infrastructure, core industries, textiles, engineering, automobiles, and right down up to MSMEs, then farm loans, tractor loans, all sorts of projects we are handling. And in the process, we develop bird's eye view of various activities, various situations, various types of borrowers. But unfortunately, we are not able to develop mastery over any of the skills. That is the reason we rely for the purpose of assessment, for the purpose of monitoring on experts in various domains. And that's why we turn to valuers, we turn to lawyers, we turn to CMA, chartered accountants, so that we can help development of the economy. We can perform our roles to the best of our abilities, and we all can collectively contribute to the development of the society. That is the purpose. And in fact, valuers, CMAs, they are our eyes and ears. Valuers, as Chitranjan ji told, they play various roles. They get involved right from the pre-sanction stage when we need an estimate of the security value. Then they play the role of lenders, independent engineers during project implementation. In case of bigger projects, we require periodical reports. We require some inputs on how our funds have been utilized, how has been the physical progress of the project along with the financial project. And in case the loans go bad, we again turn back to the valuers to get us an estimate of the realizable value of securities when we invoke our rights under SARFAESI Act. Now IBC has come, and the role of valuers has increased manifold. They are required to enlighten us on the liquidation value, on the valuation on which we can invite our bids. So they in fact valuers have become the backbone of the banking activity. If I have to put it in one line, role cannot be underestimated. And I've gone through the structure of the program. You are going to discuss valuation under IBC. You are going to discuss valuation as a credit monitoring tool, various techniques which are used to estimate the value. You are going to enlighten, of course, our valuers know all those, but the program is going to sharpen their skills. It is well thought of curriculum, and I think it is a comprehensive program. When we talk about techniques of valuation, we do talk about pitfalls in various techniques and how those pitfalls can be overcome, what are the safeguards we can take, how we can average out values which are thrown by various techniques, and all those aspects, technical aspects, I'm sure you're going to cover. But the point that I would like to highlight here is the purpose of all the efforts that we are putting, bankers as well as all our friends who assist us in performing our jobs better. At the end of the day, we have to look at the intentions of the borrower, whether intentions are bona fide or intentions are mala fide. So if the intentions, first and foremost is we have to address whether the intentions are bona fide and bona fide. That is the question we have, that has to be the foremost in our minds. As a lender, I have this question always. I am sure as valuers also we have this question when we monitor any project. So if the intention is bona fide, we have to do our duty. We have to protect the interest of the public, since banks are dealing in public money. And we have to take all the remedial steps so that the loss to the banks is minimized, and whatever loan if bank has given, that can be recovered at the earliest possible, and public money is recovered and it can be recycled in the interest of public. That should be our approach. But if the interest is bona fide, because some of the projects, especially when I'm talking about projects under implementation, they can face certain problems, certain genuine problems. COVID recently, we saw what type of problems it threw to all of us. But before I come to some of the specific problems and some of the roles that valuers, because of their maturity, played in the span of my career, I would just like to discuss two concepts. One is the one is the sculptor approach, and the other one is gardener approach. Sculptor, he has a certain vision of the vision in his mind. And according to that vision, he is chiseling the stones and he is trying to put a perfect picture out of a stone. That is the approach of a sculptor. He has certain vision, he has envisioned, and he wants that vision to be truly transformed into that picture that he is making. He is very meticulous. He wants the eyes to have the certain shape. He wants the ears of the sculptor to of the article that he is chiseling to have certain shape. And his focus is on the end result that he wants to achieve. That is the sculptor approach. We do have this sculptor approach in the jobs that we are carrying. We are perfectionists. We want certain outcome, and we put all our energy, all our efforts in achieving that outcome. Nothing wrong in that. But I would like to share another approach, that is the gardener approach. What does the gardener do? He waters the plants meticulously. He puts the right type of insecticide, pesticides into the plants. But he is not very much keen on the outcome, on the end result. It is the process that is more important to him. He expects flowers to come, but he expect a meticulous flower to come in this particular fashion, or it should come in that particular fashion. He is more focused on carrying out his duty to the best of his efficiency, very diligently, and he is process oriented. So these are two approaches that we come across during our professional careers. One is end result oriented approach, that is a perfectionist approach, and other one is gardener approach. Now, which approach do we need to follow? Of course, we need results. We need to have a sculptor in our mind. But at the same time, what I find is the difference between a good professional and an average professional is the more we are inclined towards this gardener approach. Amidst our pursuit for perfection, let's be ready to accept certain imperfections here and there. How we deal with imperfections that come in the way, that is where our maturity lies, I feel. That is my experience. And as a professional banker, as a professional valuer, I think we should be aware of that aspect. And let's not kill the gardener inside us for the sake of the sculptor. That is the point I want to drive home at the beginning of this session. Now, during project implementation phase, the valuers need to be in constant touch with the borrowers. They need to have constant discussions. They need to carry out regular site visits. And during the course of my career, I have come across some outstanding valuers, some outstanding lenders, independent engineers who have enlightened bankers, who have enlightened entrepreneurs in successfully carrying out the projects. A few instances I would share with you. Once I was handling a project in the hills, and it was a very difficult terrain. Some tunnel was to be made. In fact, the project comprised of 3-4 tunnels. Whenever they will try to construct the tunnel, there will be rainfall, there will be heavy landslide, and the hard work that has been done will be washed away by landslides. So what happened as a result of that was a lot of money was put into the project, but physical progress was not there. So how does a valuer handle this type of situation? It is a very tricky situation. If a valuer is not visiting the site regularly, if he is not analyzing the situation on the ground correctly, it can very well lead all of us to inference that there has been diversion of funds. And even though the borrower have good intention, we can take drastic steps, and then we can put project in jeopardy, bank's money in jeopardy. But in this particular case, valuers acted with a lot of maturity, and we were able to save the project. Then there was another project. It was a hospital project, multi-story construction. When they to be constructed on huge plot of land, when they were digging for laying the foundation, in one corner of the project, while digging, they came across a lot of water seepage. To stop that seepage, a lot of sand was required to be filled in. Similarly, again, a lot of financial resources were put, but physical progress was at a very slow speed. So these are the situation, classical situation, which as a lender, we need to address with a lot of maturity. As valuers, we need to understand, diagnose, and then we have to take mature approach. Then again, there was a project which I was associated with. It was a soda ash plant established on the side of ocean. Very technically, they have chosen that spread because a lot of wastewater discharge is there, which they plan to put it into the ocean. And as per environment regulations, they had to dig deep into the ocean for some kilometers. And when they were doing the deep digging, a lot of water again started coming into the project land. So again, a lot of financial resources were put, but intentions of the promoters were good. But project suffered a lot of time overrun, a lot of cost overrun because of these issues. But these are the classical examples, difficult projects, which otherwise, had the valuers not acted with long maturity, would not have seen the light of the day. But they exhibited a lot of maturity, a lot of common sense. They guided the entrepreneur, they guided and lenders in such a situation. It is very natural on their part. If there is not good advice coming, they can also press the panic button, and we can also go to the, we can also take drastic steps, which in the final analysis may not be in the interest of the economy and in the interest of the project. So the point I'm trying to drive home is we have to be very holistic. Our responsibility as a banker, as a valuer towards society is very good, is huge. And wherever an entrepreneurship is not a very usual, very common phenomena in our country, in our society. Still, we are in an economy where ideas are not valued much. In developed economies, ideas get valued, they get response from the market, and ideas can generate a lot of resources from the market. In our country, even though the ideas are brilliant, markets are not mature to respect and reward those ideas. As a result of that, all first generation entrepreneurs, all startups do need to depend on banks for financial assistance, and banks in turn turn to valuers, CMAs for specialized reports and specialized guidance. So that is the perspective. I thought in the light of importance to the economy, valuers are going to play a more vital role in the days to come. Chitranjanji was telling about various handbooks on real estate valuation, other specialized valuation. I really appreciate the efforts that the institute is putting, and I'm sure their role and responsibility is going to increase, and bankers definitely are going to look to the institutes like yours to assist us with the complex projects in coming times. I wish this webinar all the best. I'm sure there are going to be very good interactions, and all the participants are going to emerge wiser by the time the webinar comes to an end. Unfortunately, I have certain preoccupations. I will definitely go through the recordings, but I was told a couple of days back, otherwise I would have planned it better and I would have been with you for a longer time. So, but I wish all the best, and I will definitely go to the recording later in the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rohit Rishi, for your very, very elucidating and very, very comprehensive setting the pace for the entire seminar that we want to have today, with some very, very useful live examples that you have quoted out of your rich experience in the banking industry. Thank you so very much, sir. Thank you. I would
Dr.
now
Gupta,
request,
Dr. Gupta, to just I request you, please send every month our review journal to the
yes, sir,
Mr.
yes, sir,
Rishi.
yes, I'll be in touch with
Because
him,
it
sir.
will be
We'll be in
enlightening.
touch with, we'll be in
It will
touch
be a
with.
great for sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir,
sir.
we'll be in touch
Thank
with. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
sir. Thank you.
I would now request Mr. S. Venkataraman, retired Chief General Manager from State Bank of India, to talk about his perspective of valuation under IBC, valuation under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. Mr. S. Venkataraman, sir, Chief General Manager, retired from State Bank of India, and who also happens to be an insolvency professional. Sanjay, can you play his presentation, please?
Good evening to all. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for inviting me to be part of this. And my earlier speaker, Mr. Sitaranjan and Rohit Rishi. Yes, no, I retired as Chief General Manager of State Bank of India. I'm also an insolvency professional.
Yes.
But Mr. Gupta thought me fit to address the participants for valuation. No, of course, before I go into this IBC valuation, I thought I will share some of the, as a banker, having handled many projects both in India as well as outside the country. I was a CEO in London. I was a regional head for Africa also. We have, as a CEO of London, we have handled multiple projects, and many projects which required funding in India also has been funded. And so I have handled, I was in the corporate account group all through, like Mr. Rishi was talking about his experience. I also spent almost more than 3 decades in corporate lending only. In fact, I was heading on a branch which has handled more than one particular branch itself is handling about 3 lakh crores of advances. No, and no, it is size of a bank itself. So, now my take on valuation in banking, because the IBC thing I will cover a little bit later. I thought I will share. Mr. Sitaranjan is there, and of course I do not know whether Mr. Rishi is there. He has said that he has some preoccupation. No, the valuation according to banks, when do we ask a valuer to value our project? We don't ask any project which comes to the bank, we don't engage a valuer to value it. So many a time the project report may be prepared by a professional, maybe a chartered accountant or a cost accountant like you people. But the project report is given, bank goes through the bank, the credit analyst or whoever is a relationship manager who is handling the advances goes through it. Supposing in case he has some kind of a doubt about what kind of machinery and other thing, most of the time if a project is a greenfield project, all the quotations which are submitted for establishing a greenfield project are taken at face value, and the project is assessed and term loans are given. Whereas a valuer, when we talk about valuer, where do we do? When we talk about small loans, say especially in a collateral kind of a thing, supposing a housing loan is given, now then we engage some valuers to see whether the flat or property is valued properly, whether we are giving the right type of term loans to such kind of assets where the banks are taking. But so that is what I wanted to say is the valuation per se engaged by valuation per se done by bankers are not much when lending is happening. But so of course, I'm not saying that bankers do not engage valuers, but nowadays, especially for projects, especially for they were talking about some of the projects where infrastructure projects and things like that, where too much of technical things are involved, the valuers are engaged. Otherwise, the valuers or role comes into play in the banking scenario post-sanction when the account goes into some kind of a stress. Especially if the bank has to take action against the borrower, then they look at because the bankers, for a comfort only, they take collateral. It is not based on collateral lending is done. If any banks does collateral-based lending, then probably it has missed the vital point whether the project is a viable project. Okay, so okay, when the project fails, I lay my hand on the collateral, I dispose of the collateral, I will realize, supposing if that is the approach of a bank, I personally feel that is not the correct approach. However small or big the advance is, unless, as Mr. Sitharanjan was mentioning, he was talking about 5 C's. Definitely, one bankers have to see all these aspects before funding a project. But when the valuer's role comes, when an advance turns bad, the valuer role comes in. And now I will talk about the IBC, because all of us know that before IBC, banks had the SARFAESI, DRT, and BAFR, the various means of recovery modes. But IBC as a special thing, because the disposition of IBC is that a result has to be delivered by the insolvency professional within 180 days, or sorry, 270 days in the case of CARP process, or additionally another 60 days, 330 days. That is what the court mandated. But of course, if you see many of the IBC cases, it is being dragged in courts. There it is being dragged for 3 years, 4 years and all. Even though the IBC came into existence in 2016, there are many cases which is still hanging on fire. But the valuation under IBC, supposing you see, the valuation is to determine the fair value and the liquidation value. Within 47 days of admission of the case under CARP, the valuation has to be, the valuer have to be appointed under IBC. And IBC mentions that 2 valuers have to be appointed for valuing the assets. Say, supposing a high value advance is given, and a factory building, machinery, so many things are there. There are too much of complications involved in this. So broadly, the assets are classified into 3 categories: plant and machinery, land and building, and the securities. So 3 types of valuers are required to value value an asset which is under IBC, which if it is undergoing a CARP process. Then 3 types. The valuer's role comes many a time. There are specialist valuers who value only plant and machinery. Some of them value land and building. Some of them do even securities valuation. And the complication happens. What type of an asset which is under stress? Supposing if it is engaged in broadly a service industry, say for example, an eye hospital is there. They are having hundreds of branches, 200 branches across the country. And the valuation, what do they have? They have eye testing machines, and they have some other equipment. Otherwise, it is mostly doctors, the people who are serving the patients. Then what kind of an asset is there for a valuer to value? Okay, some of the medical equipments may be dated, outdated ones and other things. So the valuation may not be really good one, which may fetch the exposure of bank which has taken on that kind of an activity. Otherwise it goes into. Will you please go back to the previous slide? Somebody is I am not doing it. The first slide, the valuation. Will you please go to that? Yeah. So procurement under the code. I will say the responsibility of RP is to appoint 2 registered valuers. As I mentioned, within 47 days. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. Sorry for in between if I cough or something like that. Within 47 days, the RP is expected to appoint a valuer, and the valuer has to be a registered valuer under IBBIE. So the RP does the evaluation of the valuer depending upon his requirement. He appoints the valuer. Next slide, please. Then what the valuer is expected to do? He has to determine a fair value and the liquidation value as per the regulations of CARP. So I don't want to mention the regulations. No, what is fair value? Fair value means it is the estimated realizable value of the assets of the corporate debtor if they were to be exchanged on an insolvency commencement date. No, please note that the valuation is to be done on an insolvency commencement date between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's length transaction, after proper marketing and where the parties had acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. I was talking about that the role of an RP is to appoint a valuer within 47 days after admission. Now, there are many cases under CARP. If you see, the admission itself has taken years. The courts, the NCLT have not taken the application for under section 7 or 9 or 10 immediately. There are cases which has been taken up after a year or so. If that be the case, if a no asset, then how an valuer has to, it is becomes a bit of a ticklish issue or a complex issue for the valuer, because he has to give a valuation based on the CARP commencement date, but the value is deteriorate. The application, the banker which has encountered a substantial default has filed an application. There is no factory is not running for so many years, because bankers doesn't know the, supposing there is a default, bankers doesn't go into CARP process immediately. They do their own homework before thinking of entering into CARP. They themselves are spending quite a considerable time. Then after filing, if the NCLT takes longer time, then there is a much deterioration in the value of the asset. Then it becomes a ticklish issue for the valuer to value it. But unfortunately, the court says the valuer has to determine the value on the CARP commencement date. Now, what I meant is, okay, it is admitted now only, sir. So within 47 days, no, it doesn't happen. There are many cases where even after admission, there is a lot of litigation. We are handling as an IP, our group is handling more than 15 accounts. There is a sugar factory. Then the corporate debtor went into NC. So he is saying that he objected to the application filing in NCLT passed the audit, took a lot of time. Then he appealed to NCLAT. Then after that, he went to Supreme Court. Then all this hearing has taken almost 2 years. Then you see the value of the sugar plant, which is deteriorating. The plant is not functioning for 2 years or 3 years. Then it becomes a ticklish issue for the valuer. But unfortunately, the court wants the valuer has to determine the CARP commencement date, which value is deteriorated substantially. So it becomes a problem for valuers. So the role of valuers becomes extremely difficult in the case of some of the cases where the admission takes longer time. Of course, he is expected to determine the fair value, then also the liquidation value. The liquidation value means estimated realizable value of the assets of the corporate debtor if the corporate debtor were to be liquidated on an insolvency commencement date. Here again, the insolvency commencement date comes. Sorry, I was receiving a call. So the insolvency commencement date, again, it becomes a problem for to determine the liquidation value. So, but it is a challenge for the valuer to do the liquidation value also. Next trial, please. Over is, yeah. The requirement under IBC, what during CARP and during liquidation process, what is to be done by the valuer to provide an estimate of a fair value and the liquidation value computed in accordance with the internationally accepted valuation standards. Now, so they say now only the prominence of valuers have come after introduction of IBC. Now, because there are international standards which which are laid down for valuing an asset. So the valuer has to follow these standards before submitting a valuation report. Under liquidation process, he is expected to determine the realizable value of the asset or the business ascender. That is, A, assets on standalone basis, assets in a sum sale basis, assets collectively, assets in parcels, CD as a going concern, business of the CD as a going concern. So he has to determine, he has to keep in mind when he is giving a liquidation assets valuation, he has to keep in mind that he has to provide these sets of values while submitting a report to the liquidator or the insolvency professional, whoever is handling that case. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. So as I mentioned, the valuers are required to physically verify the assets to be valued and provide an estimate of the fair value and the liquidation value computed in accordance with the internationally accepted valuation standards. That is what I have mentioned. Similarly, the international valuation standards prescribe the basic framework and the guidelines of valuation exercise. I don't want to go deeper into this subject because you being a professional and also valuers who would have done some kind of valuation, you understand what it is and all. So, but this is what is expected of a valuer. The challenges, what I wanted to discuss here is, what are all the challenges which is being faced by valuers while valuing, because we have engaged number of valuers during CARP process, and we have found out there are a lot of difficulties when the valuation reports are discussed at COC meetings. If you people are interested, I can give some kind of feedback on those things later part of my discussions. Yeah, next slide, please. What the recent amendment which has come in the IBC code is, normally two valuers are expected to provide the valuation. If the valuations are different, say supposing the value of an asset is valued at by one valuer, fair value as 200 crores, liquidation value as 150 crores. And the second valuer, supposing he values the fair value as 350 crores and liquidation value as 300 crores, then there is a substantial difference in the valuation by the two valuers. Definitely, is there a valuer's fault? No, the valuers have adopted different standards. Of course, I am taking an extreme case. There is a much variation in the valuation. What the recent amendment says, if the valuation difference is more than 25%, then it is the responsibility of the liquidator or the insolvency professional to engage a third valuer to determine the value. Then it becomes the lowest of the two value will be taken by the COC for determining the value of the assets. Yes, next slide, please. What are all the expected amendments in the IBC, which I understand these are all under consideration by IBBA. They are planning to do a geotagging of immovable assets. Geotagging means supposing an assets are situated in different parts of the country, then the valuers are expected to do a geotagging of these assets and provide valuation for these assets while furnishing the valuation of the assets which are distributed geographically across the country. Even some assets could be there outside the country also. So the geotagging, but it is not yet implemented. But I do not know how. No, my perception is it's going to be extremely difficult for valuers to do this kind of a geotagging and valuing it. But it is a challenge, and IBBA expect this has to be implemented. This is what is expected to be implemented once the amendment is put in place. Then another change which the IBBA is planning is, before finalizing the report by the valuer, RP COC must be given an opportunity to interact with the various valuers to understand their valuation methods, underlying assumptions and the justification, so that proper valuation is accepted. But you people may ask whether this kind of a procedure is not there currently. Yes, even though it is not there in the code, but in the practical aspect, if you see, RP engages the valuer and RP discusses with the valuer throughout the course of his evaluation, and if necessary, the RP involves COC. These are all informal arrangement, but the code doesn't specify that the RP or the COC must involve the valuers for interaction. But so the amendments are going to be brought in, Once the amendment is brought, then it becomes mandate by the court that RP and the COC must give an opportunity for the valuer to present his valuation before the COC, so that the COC can evaluate the method used by the valuer while assessing the value of the assets. This is the expected amendment which is going to come in maybe in the near future. We do not know. There are many amendments which have been discussed, and still they are in the discussion stage only. Nothing has been brought about. In some of the cases, maybe all of you may know the role of COC. Now they have talked about the amendments almost a year back. Still, it is yet to see the light of the day. We do not know when these amendments will be brought in. Next slide, please. Say another major challenge is the liquidation value, because there is a wide variation between the fair value and the liquidation value. Normally, we have seen a number of valuers cases. How do they arrive at a liquidation value? There is no specified method to arrive at. Sorry, there is no specified method given under IBBI code how to arrive at a liquidation value. What the valuers adopt is, they do a fair value, they arrive at the fair value and give some kind of a discount to the fair value and give the liquidation value. Depending upon the perception of the valuers gives a liquidation value. And many a time the COC questions why there is a large variation between a fair value and the liquidation value, and the RP is not in a position to explain also. And many a time the valuers are also not in a position to explain, because he sees in case of a distress sale, it is his perception. It is not, there is no method, it is his perception. In case of when the liquidation value comes, when there is asset has to be sold under distress, that is, say there is no sale as a going concern, either the asset has to be sold as a whole or in bits and pieces. So the valuer determines, supposing if it said the scrap value, so substantially he reduces the value and gives some a lower value. Normally this is 15%, 20%, 25% based on the perception of the valuer he gives. Many a time the COC questions RP why the valuer has given such a wide variation between a fair value and a liquidation value. So this is a challenge the valuers have to consider while furnishing a fair value as well as liquidation value for a particular type of asset. So this is broadly what is specified under the IBC code for valuers to determine. If you people, we have done number of, as I mentioned, I am not involved as an IP. I was supporting as an advisor to a group of insolvency professionals as a senior banker and experienced banker. But I used to participate in the COC meetings. Many a time the RP used to be questioned by the COC. What is the method of valuation? What is the basis on which you have appointed the valuer also? Because it is, the RP, he calls a court, RP decides. Of course, the court doesn't specify that RP has to get the consent of COC. It is the responsibility of the RP on before the 47th day to appoint two valuers. So from the empaneled valuers list, but many a time COC questions on what basis you have appointed the valuers. Second, the valuation methods also are being questioned by the COC to the RP, because he is not involved in the actual valuation. Of course, he provides all the information what is available with him as an RP. And you see the RP, when the company is under CARP, it is extremely difficult to get information from the company. Many of the time, the key personnels are either resigned or not there. The company, the corporate director refuses to cooperate with the RP. He doesn't provide the information which is required to do a proper valuation. So it becomes extremely difficult for the RP. And in turn, when it becomes difficult for the RP, that is what the information he has to provide. What he is having only you can provide to the valuer. Then it becomes a challenge for the valuers also to value the asset. Whereas when the conundrum is the RP is not having the information, the valuers have not been provided the information, whereas the COC questions the valuer as well as the RP, how come you have done such as a low value for a asset, which according to her us should have given a substantially high fair value or a liquidation value. Then it becomes a responsibility of the RP as well as the valuer to defend his valuation method before the COC. So these are all the things probably my esteemed participants who are all valuers, you will be facing while taking up any IBC assignments. But I would tell you, for the valuer, there is substantial role to be played by the valuer after the introduction of IBC, because the bankers, when they engage valuers, they come to the valuers only when they are not able to realize their book dues, that is outstanding dues. If they feel that the collateral value or the primary asset value is substantially high, they can, through the process of SURFACE or some other method, if they feel that they can realize better value, they don't engage the valuer. But whereas under IBC, it has become compulsory on the part of RP or the liquidator that he has to appoint a valuer to determine the value of the assets. So there is ample opportunity for valuers to get an assignment, provided the applications under CARP. Now the bankers are also feeling the problem or the heat that their applications are not getting admitted in time. So they are looking for opportunities not to enter IBC and realize their dues. But hopefully going forward, when these kind of issues are being addressed to IBBI, and IBA also has taken up with IBBI, that I hope the government also will come with some guidelines, because already you must have seen that the applications have to be admitted in quick time. The amendments as under circulation say within 30 days of application filing, the NCLT has to determine whether the application has to be admitted or not. I was talking to you earlier saying that it takes years also. Now, once the amendment is put into notice, I mean the Gazette notification is issued, then the NCLT is bound to admit the application within 30 days. Either they have to accept it or reject it. So the opportunity for valuers, according to me, are substantially high under IBC. And I would only request as a banker, you please be fair on your job. When you do a valuation, please say we don't give any pressure, whether you do it under IBC or non-IBC. For a banker, you consider all aspects which are fair, and you provide the fair valuation, because we have come across in many a time even substantially higher value, because depending upon the borrower connection with the valuers, higher values are being provided by valuers. They fall prey for some petty things. But later on, when the banks finds out that the valuer has not given a fair value, then bankers do not engage that kind of valuers in future assignments. My only appeal and request to all valuers: be fair in your profession. Provide the fair value as per your estimation, as per the scientific method which you are following to arrive at the value, whether you do it for arriving at the fair value or liquidation value. So with this, I think I will close my discussion. If you people have any questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, I thank Mr. Gupta, because he may be running out of time, and also others for giving me an opportunity to be part of you and discuss with you. I think one hand is raised. If I can answer that question, I'm not. It is Ketan Jasani. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Sir, could you please go through the slide number 6? Slide number 6. Yeah,
Slide
here,
number 6.
yeah, here you have informed that there is a guideline for appoint a third valuer.
Yeah.
But now my question is there: if the third valuer is either is out of the range from the L1 or L2, maybe the more than 25% of L1 or L2, then what is the guideline of that in this scenario?
No, the valuer doesn't know the value.
Right.
Say when valuers gives the valuation report to the resolution, insolvency professional, the insolvency professional comes to know of the value, and he places the valuation before the COC. Then the COC discusses that. Supposing the valuation either L1 or L2, the variation is more than 25%. Then the COC decides that we have to appoint a third valuer, because the valuation done by both the valuers are far in variance in arriving at the value. Then the COC tells a resolution professional, please appoint a third valuer to arrive at the value of the assets.
But my
Have I
question is
answered your
that,
question?
no, my question is that if the value of this third valuer
Ah.
is beyond the 25% either
No,
from
then-
L1
then-
or L2, then
No. Then you have to take all the three valuation into account and determine either a fair value or a liquidation value. There is no question of again going for a fresh
going on.
valuation.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So
It
that
is some
RV has
kind
to
of a-
take a call or COC has to take a call.
Yeah. COC will take a call.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, Mr. Venkataraman, for very lucid presentation explaining in detail the law, the provisions, as well as the practical aspects of valuation under IBC. Thank you so very much, sir, for joining this
Thank you very
webinar
much, sir.
at our short
Thank you.
notice and request.
Sir, I may be permitted to take
Sure,
leave
sir.
of you
Sure,
all.
please
Thank
carry
you.
on. We now have a very learned, resourceful, and experienced retired director from a bank and who is currently chairman of Insolvency Professional Agency of Institute of Cost Accountants of India, Dr. J.D. Sharma, sir, to share his perspective with regard to the valuation. His topic for deliberation over the next period of 10 to 15 minutes will be valuation, the banker's perspective. Over to Dr. J.D. Sharma. Dr. J.D. Sharma, sir, are you there?
Sir, unmute करना जरूर पड़ेगा. Sharma sir, please.
Am I audible now?
Yes, please. Yes, sir. Please go on. Please go ahead.
I thank Dr. Gupta ji to have given me a chance to share some of my practical experiences with regard to valuation from perspective of a banker. I have some typical experiences. The first one I would talk about is tangible securities to be valued and intangible securities to be valued.
Yes.
Now, tangible securities are physical securities which can be seen and all that. Intangibles are trademarks, patent, goodwill, and kind of things. So we all know about one account called Kingfisher Airlines.
Mm.
And there, one of the collateral securities taken by bankers collectively was the brand value. And Kingfisher was a group which was considered very valuable, and it was valued very high. The brand value was valued very high. But all the bankers collectively accepted that as one of the securities, collaterals. But in my perception, the securities, collateral securities are taken and charged by the banks in their favor only to fall back upon in case of default. And when there is a default in loan repayment and interest servicing, the beginning is the signs of sickness. And when it goes on and comes to the stage of non-performing assets, or it comes to the stage of going to IBC now, or going for liquidation or selling, changing the management and all, the brand value is one thing which becomes the first casualty. When company is doing well, the brand value goes up. When company is on a downward trend, brand value also starts declining, and it may at one stage become zero. So what is the purpose of accepting intangible as a security? In my view, the purpose is just to indulge in a self-deceptive exercise, because we don't take collateral securities for fair weather time, for good times. When company is doing well, we don't need to enforce the securities we have got charged to the bank. You'll be needing enforcing the security only when the company has gone down, and the security value will be 0. Now, in this, there are two options. One is the bankers accept intangible asset as a security on face value of it. Face value, I mean, is as it appears in balance sheet. Whatever figure, whatever amount of intangibles appears in balance sheet, that itself is taken as value of security. That's one option. Second option is to get the brand value valuation done through a registered valuer. And when registered valuers are assigned this job, they value the intangible on date of valuation. That is, when loan has to be given, company is doing well. So their valuation will be close to what is appearing in the balance sheet. So in either case, this is deceptive because it will have no realizable value when we need to enforce this as a security. That's one where I would request the valuers to look beyond today. And when they are required to do the valuation of an intangible, they must have it in mind that it will be fallen back upon only in case of distress, only in case of default. And at that time, what will the brand value? So it will be negligible. In some cases, it still can continue to be, because if there is takeover of the company, still the brand name may have some attraction for its customers. So there can be value, but it will not be definitely as much as it has been shown in the balance sheet as intangible and by the valuer at the time of valuing it when loan is to be given. So if valuers can have some farsightedness and look beyond 5-10 years and think of worst situations when security has to be enforced, what will be its likely value? So realizable value in times of distress should also be mentioned. Mention the fair value, today's value, but also mention the distress sale value or distress realizable value of the intangible asset which is being taken as security. That's one experience I had with Kingfisher. Another experience is at micro level. We were to give a loan against property, and that property was already charged to another public sector bank as a collateral security for their advances. And that was a loan given 6 months prior. 6 months prior, the valuation of the security done by the valuer was 50 lakh rupees. It was quite fair, reasonable, seeing the market conditions and location of the property. This was a property located in Delhi, in Pitampura area. But 6 months later, they came to us and they said, we want a loan against property, and we have given that security as collateral to another bank. So if you can give us loan against property, we'll get the property released and give you as primary security. We did that, but the requirement was not having valuation of property as 50 lakhs in mind. They needed a loan of 1 crore. And loan against property, our bank was holding a margin of 50%. So that means if valuation is 2 crore, we can give 1 crore as loan against property. So we engaged a valuer, and that valuer valued that property at 2 crores. So when I came to know, I discovered it, for me it looks a prompted valuation. That is, the banker and valuer, they join hands and they give valuation as is required by the client and the bank. If client needs 1 crore loan and has to show 2 crore valuation, the valuer is willing to give 2 crore valuation. I think when this happens, the valuer, most of the valuers are honest, maintain very high standard of integrity, ethics, transparency, and they're really good. But even if one valuer has got this kind of attitude towards getting business, that he can do this type of valuation, I think it brings disrepute to the profession. So my request to valuers will be please bring repute to your profession and never bring disrepute to the profession, because even if one valuer does it, the disrepute comes to community. Though the people are really good, honest, high standard of ethics and integrity, but still they have to be bracketed in the same bracket as one bad valuer is. So it's very important for our community of valuers to follow the code of conduct and do things without compromising. I as a valuer might get little extra fees for giving this type of valuation, but that could be, as Venkatraman sir was giving an example, this could be end of my career as a valuer. The other bankers who come to know of it may not rely on my valuation report. And if I earn that kind of reputation in market, that my valuation reports are not done objectively, and honest bankers will not be able to rely on that report, I think we do disservice to ourselves also. So valuers being important part of the ecosystem of money lending and recovery must take care of this aspect. The third example I would like to share with you is very funny example. At the time of giving loan, the property which was close to agricultural property, but it was not being used for agricultural purposes, that was offered as a security to the bank. Bank normally engaged a valuer and handed over the paper that please do valuation of this property, which is being offered to us as security for our advance. Now that valuer has done the valuation, and his basis of valuation was the market rate of land, agricultural land prevailing in that area, that is properties, agricultural properties surrounding this land, were the basis for doing valuation of this property. And this property was valued. It was accepted as a collateral security. And when the advance loan went bad, the question came to enforce the security which we have taken. So when we have to enforce the security, we have to go and identify the property. When bankers went to identify the property was being used as a cremation ground, Samsan Bhumi. Now, Samsan Bhumi, how does a banker realize its value? By enforcing it to recover its loan. It's next to impossible. Selling a Samsan Bhumi in a village which is near the agricultural land, who will buy this and for what consideration a person will buy? Can he earn money out of it? Because in village Samsan, there is no tax. Persons come and cremate the bodies of their dear ones. They don't have to pay anything to anybody. Now, who is the owner? And that property was owned by somebody once. His forefathers have left this property unutilized and given it for the purpose of cremating the bodies. So they have the title to the property. The property has passed on to the present owner through inheritance, but it is not sellable. Nobody will buy this property. So when we reached that stage, even distress sale was not possible. No buyers available. So if valuer has really visited the property physically and seen for himself that it is a Samsan Bhumi, he would not have given valuation report. So it's very important for valuers to have the physical inspection of the property before giving a valuation report. We can't give valuation report only by seeing the boundaries of the property. What is on east side of the property, what is on west side, what is on north side, what is on south side, one side being road, other side being agricultural land. We can't say it's a roadside agricultural land and may command high value and all that, when practically the property is being used as a cremation ground. So my request to valuers is, please never give any valuation report without physically inspecting the property, evaluating the utility of the property, the present use of the property, future possibilities of converting this into some other use, how these probabilities will affect the valuation of this property. So that is, we lost the security. When we lost the security, we lost our advance also, could not be repaid. And then other aspects of disciplinary action and other things were taken here. Now, fourth example I would give is that a property near Alvar, a barren land, it was physically inspected by the valuer, and he gave valuation report by inspecting the property. When he gives valuation report, he says that presently it is a barren land. In some places, there are mountainous structures, and those mountainous structures may not have any commercial value of the property. But the land which does not have mountainous structure can be fairly valued at this much. Now, the whole thing was absurd because it was a barren land and it cannot be separated from the mountainous structure of the property. And there cannot be a buyer when it is a barren land. Just to say that neighboring land was sold for this rate does not mean this barren land with mountainous structure where no agriculture is possible, because mountainous structure means up to some depth in the land, there will be the stones. And mountainous structure has got the stones above the ground also. But where there are no mountainous structure, at least in land, there will be stones. And when it came to giving the loan, its value, it was in crores. Value was accepted by the bank because bank has also not physically gone for inspection of the property. So when bankers should expect the valuer to go for physical inspection of the property, it is primary responsibility and sacred duty of the bankers also to inspect the property, identify the property. In case of need to enforce the security, it is the banker who will be identifying the property, not the valuer. Valuer would have gone out of business. He would have become too big to do the valuation of this property again. Valuer would have died. Anything could have happened. But bankers have a system of periodical inspection of the securities. So they must inspect not only before giving the loan, before entrusting the property to the valuer for doing the valuation, but they must also inspect the property periodically. Every 6 months, there is a provision to inspect properties. Some properties to be inspected every year, and some properties like plant machinery, the current assets, work in progress, and all that inventories, they are to be inspected every month. In case of multiple units, the periodicity of inspection may vary from 1 month to 3 months, or sometimes even in 6 months. But inspection cannot be done away with by the bankers themselves. They must regularly inspect the properties which have realizable value as a primary or collateral security. And valuers, I would request, please don't give valuation report without inspecting the property. It plays very important role, because I will again emphasize that bankers take security, whether it's primary or collateral, only as a backup to fall back upon in case of distress, in case of default. So when the very purpose of taking collateral security or primary security is to enforce it in case of default, the property should be first identifiable. Second, it must have a realizable value. So these things I thought I will share on negative side of valuation, because I said most of the valuers are very honest, very ethical, and have very high degree of integrity and follow the code of conduct which is prescribed. But even if it is 1 or 2 valuers who indulge in unethical practices, it brings disrepute. So in the interest of profession, in the interest of sustainability of your own business, own profession, please maintain very high standards of honesty, integrity, and transparency and objectivity. Valuation must be objective. It should not be influenced by extraneous considerations, by hearsay, under any circumstances. So I wish the valuers community very best of luck, and they must prosper day by day as the economy prospers. Gupta ji, I once again thank you very much for giving me a chance to share some of my perspectives as a banker about valuation of the securities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. J.D. Sharma, sir, for your very, very elaborate and lucid examples, real-life examples, your rich experience in the banking sector, which is really, really useful for the participants to learn what are the nuances of valuation, both from the banker's perspective as well as from the perspective of registered valuers. We are really thankful for you for sparing your time to be with us and enlightening our learned participants here at today's seminar. Thank you so much. We now have Mr. B.D. Sharma, registered valuer, who has been doing a lot of work for the banks with regard to the valuation of their various kinds of properties. He's going to share with us his perspectives and the processes of valuation that he has followed for carrying out valuation for various bank assignments. Mr. B.D. Sharma, sir.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Namaskar, sir.
Hope we can see the slides.
Yes, please carry on.
Yeah, so good afternoon, participant. And as the previous speaker, gentleman, ex-director in bank, has shared his experience about valuation in bank, and he was truly correct that majority of the valuers in bank are sincere valuers, and they do kind of honest and fair duty to their job assignment. However, there has been little confusion or kind of not performance of valuation in banking that has caused certain discussions and questions around how the valuation is conducted and what could be done to improve this community, this procedure. Or somebody said there could be rules, there could be some institution, and there could be some regulations. And so there are so many things going on since last 20 years. And in this regard, a lot of work has been done by IBBI. They have instituted organizations and RBOs, and there is a kind of good work is going around how to improve. There are success stories as well, and there are some questions around as well. Naturally, when things start and it is a new start, so naturally there are some course of corrections required. However, taking core to our discussion, we are talking about the bank valuations. So I'll be here covering up like what is the purpose of perspective of bank to get properly valued, and what is the procedure, how the valuation is done. So naturally speaking, banker has a first charge on the receipt of the property. Precisely meaning that bankers' business is not about the properties. They are doing their business, they are the shareholder, and they have first charge on the business. If anything happens, bankers are the safe party because they are taking less risk, they are advancing money on the low rent, low interest, and naturally owner or shareholder has a high risk, he is earning high income from the business. So naturally talking about it, first charge on all the assets is a government charge. Government has first charge, second charge is a bank charge. Next charge is shareholders. Bank purpose naturally for the valuation is safety in case of default. Usually most of the 60 to 70% cases do not see default. Maybe this percent is much higher, maybe 80, 90%. Only 10% of cases see default. But this 10 to 20% is issue where bank need to make effort to recover dues. This becomes serious question. Otherwise, there is no talk. We should not talk. We are talking. We have like bank and the borrower has good relation. But as soon as there is a default, there is a recovery process. And there are two types of efforts. One, negotiation with the borrower to pay back and sell the property. If value is high or appreciate over the period of time, this process succeeds. As we see as on today, in last one and 1.5 years, around Delhi, there is a decent appreciation in industrial properties like Greater Noida, Manesar, all those areas. So those properties who were seeing like kind of client was not turning up to negotiate. Now clients are turning up because their values have gone 2 and 3 times. So their dues to the bank are much lower than the present value of the property. Borrower naturally comes, negotiates, and pay back the bank dues. Maybe whatever negotiates it with bank choice, but the owner of the property is able to sell the property, get some money back, and able to pay back the bank loan. So this is the first choice bank. Bank do not get involved into property businesses. And if even this do not succeed, because property do not always appreciate. Again, give an example, in Delhi, in most of the areas, property have not appreciated for more than 10 years. So if there was a loan, say 100 rupees loan, collateral security covered maybe 120, 130, but interest accumulates over the period of time. So exposure goes beyond the value of the property. So recovery from the sale of the property, negotiation do not take place. Now recovery from the sale of property is required. Now naturally, since we are discussing bank, borrower and property relation, so how the valuer is appointed? Valuer is appointed by the bank because valuer to see the property from the banker perspective. To see the property, there are varied perspectives. One is a seller perspective, another is a purchaser perspective, like what should be the future value of the property. But the valuer, if valuer is appointed by the bank, he shall see from the banker perspective, what can be recovered from the property, not what is asking price. When we normally go in the market and talk about the properties mostly in the Delhi and NCR region, people talk about what is asking price. Say in industrial plot in Greater Noida, people will talk, seller is asking 10 crore, 12 crore, 9 crore, so what? But it is not the sale price. If we go to the sale price, you see our environment is such that registered sales are not true to the market prices. So this gap is actually causing kind of concern. We cannot address that, but we have to value on the banker's perspective so that bank is safe from the property bank has mortgaged. And to this appointment, bank has a very rugged and systematic procedure in place that bank appoints valuer. Bank appointment of valuer really helps because valuer then do not succumb to feedback pressure, knowledge pressure, other pressures from the various stakeholders around the loan process or the borrower property. So if bank appoints valuer, bank pay for the valuation fee. So appointment means who pay the fees. So in the banking, bank is paying the fees to the valuer or the borrower. It is different agenda that bank is debiting to borrower. It is bank and borrower relationship. But to my knowledge, in many cases, there is also a scenario that bank pay the fees, not the borrower. It is not debited to borrower. And now we are talking, because overall scenario, we are talking the collateral securities and valuation. There are two types of properties in the bank. One is financial assets, another is asset-based values. Financial assets are like cash-based assets, stocks, maybe bonds, and there are so many financial assets. But asset-based values are appreciating asset, inflation hedge, or the depreciating asset. Appreciating assets are land building, or the gold. So gold is kind of movable asset. So now we are talking immovable asset, that is appreciating the land building property. Depreciating assets are plant and machinery. They normally have a life. They have normally a certain life. They have to earn its income or the make residual income, and they depreciate over the period of time. So now coming back to appointment of valuer. After appointment, now I'll be covering immovable property because it is a major, it has major stake, major variation, it has appreciation also, and it has shown kind of surprises also to the bank and to all other institutions and stakeholders. Why do value go down and say on the value up, everybody is happy, but why do value go down? There has been many discussions. I'll be probably covering in a brief. Now, how do valuer conduct the valuation process? As a banker, every stakeholder shall know, number one, in case of land building immovable asset, is a very important point. Like valuer examines the documents. Documents are legal documents. They contain various individual inheritance related details drafted by the lawyer, but surprisingly, value related details, like asset related details, are really very few in every ownership document. They are only kind of area description, maybe size of the property, and so many things. Very meager. We hardly get one paragraph dedicated to the description of the property. The rest of the document is covering lineage, inheritance, and so many details. And what are the various aspects other than the description? Property description I have covered. It is like if in case of factory, in case of apartment, in case of warehouse, it is a land size mentioned therein. it is a building construction thereon. In case of ready-made apartment, it is the area. Now, matter comes to measurement, mode of measurement. Even mode of measurement is very challenging to the valuer. Only experienced valuers are able to attend to it. Like I give you a very simple example. There are large complex properties from warehouse industries to very large tract of agricultural land converted to various change of land uses. But even if I cover a flat or apartment in Dwarka, it starts with, in some apartments, area mentioned is a carpet area. For the valuation, we have to take carpet area. Carpet area means where you can lay the carpet, and carpet areas are defined in various statutory RERA and other areas. So in an apartment, carpet area I mentioned, say 1,000 square feet, but market ongoing rates are calculated on the maybe covered area or super area basis. So if I apply a rate for carpet area, the same rate do not apply to carpet area because I have to convert this carpet area into covered area or super area to make it comparable. As I convert this area, so 1,000 square feet flat becomes 1,500 square feet as a comparable. Now the rate I was using 10,000 rupees per square feet for super area. If it is calculated for carpet area, naturally rate has two factors, but that is not reasonable. So now there's a real challenge whether valuer has to measure apartment after measurement, which is the measurement carpet covered at super areas. Similarly, it happens in the building also. Physical measurement in buildings also, like large tracts of land, measurement is serious issue. So you see, that is the reason why architects and engineers are appointed as the valuers for the precise measurement. And after the physical measurements, there is a huge area around survey for prospects and use of utility. Normally, we assume, like say, ISA banking has a process. They believe that they can check, sign, and approve the value. But there is misconception. There are many complex properties which banker, not being the professional, cannot really judge whether the value is right or wrong because there are use-related issues. On the title, it is appearing agricultural land, but subsequently use happened industrial, warehousing, or institutional. Sale purchase is happening for assumed or maybe highest and best use purposes. What could be the best use? So this judgment is very difficult. So it comes from the source like survey gives the result. There are other institutions operating around the properties like building bylaws authority. It is very critical to examine what authority around the property is operating, what land use is permitted in the property, whether this is residential, again, whether this is a warehouse, commercial. This kind of exploration is very important. It changes value drastically from 1 to 4 times. Again, rules, authorities, institutions operating around the property. Now, last comes who is the consumer of the property. This changes value drastically from, say, X to 100X kind of things. Consumer means if property is here, the purchaser is retail residence or shops, then there are large number of borrowers. They can see the property. There can be large number of bets. But maybe property, when it comes to property, is a large tract of land. So there has to be intermediary or a builder who can use this land, can develop flats and apartment. And there is an intermediation cost also. One is a construction cost, but there is an entrepreneurial cost also that at times goes 20 to 30 times, 30%. So this is very difficult to calculate because in this case, there are very few buyers, builders, those who will really take interest on the property, then they rebuild it and they construct and sell off. So this process requires 2-3 years. So this is the entire business. So knowing for a property that which kind of business will come into this property, what kind of profit they will be assuming out of this property, and to realize and to convert this property to end use. So that is the true value of the property. And investment, future prospects, like there are some parties, those who invest in properties, they are small properties, but there are some institutions also, like some properties like school, colleges, they also are charged to bank as a mortgage, but how to value? Land building cannot be applied to this process because sum of parts is not the value. Some total land building may result to a higher value and at times may result to lower value in case of institution or say college. Nowadays, from year 2000 to 2010, 2008 in Delhi and around localities, there was a lot of colleges coming up around, and so land purchase, building constructed, the total sum cost, the value was much higher because it was already converted to usable size. But now that business particularly has seen change. Now institutions are not doing well. Few institutions are doing well, those who are really operating well. Those institutions have not been successful to operate. There is no taker for land and building on the cost basis, like what is the cost of construction land building. So value is not sum of land and building, it is much lower. So this aspect has to be examined. Industrial properties, they are really different properties. At times, the rental is calculated. So thus, I conclude to say there is a distinct approach applied to distinct properties. It cannot be uniform. However, all the valuation courses, general literature, they say there are few approaches of valuation. They are cost approach, means what is the cost of the project, land cost and building construction cost, A, B, C, D, whatever element for to construct the building. Another is income approach. What rent, what income that property can generate, like shop, office, what rent they generate, what yield people expect out of the property. So that way value is calculated. Third is comparable approaches. In some properties, rent approach and both do not apply. Like in case of residential apartments, again, I come back to apartment in Dwarka. So prices apartment to apartment are compared. It is not compared that what is the cost of rent, what is the cost of the building. Similarly, rent do not justify the value of the property of apartments. So, there is interplay of calculations like simple games. As valuer get expertise, they know how to calculate, they know how to judge. I'm not going to detail like which how, but gradually it becomes really very complicated. Senior valuer, learned valuer really know how to calculate the value, but not everyone in the lot. Expertise is required to assess the value. Conclusively, valuer is the right person to value the property. Two views consistency is indicator of good conclusion. But in case if there is inconsistency, third expert is called or third valuer is called. Whosoever closer, they are considered two values within the range. Well known at places it is 15%, other places it is 25%. But we have seen in many cases where a group of valuers are called, they have been given chance to explain why and what is the value. And that way, there has been made consensus what should be the value of the property. Sir, any questions, please?
Thank you so much, sir, for your very lucid presentation based upon your real life, long years of experience of dealing with the bank valuation matters. It's been very, very enriching and very, very learning perspective from the participant's point of view. In case they have some questions, they'll come back to you after we have had another presentation. Now we request Mr. K.S. Ayadurai, a registered valuer, having long years of experience of doing valuation for the bankers, to kindly share his perspectives on the theme of the webinar today. Mr. K.S. Ayadurai, sir.
Good evening to you, Guptaji. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
Eminent participants, I consider myself very fortunate to associate with an elite group like this. Now, I would like to get into only the positive objectives of valuation front. There are enough, the risks and other, I won't say negative, the apprehensions are adequately exuberated by the speakers hitherto. So I would like to share my very, very purposeful, objective and positive experiences, which would lead every one of us a long way. I hope so. I am 69, not very young, not very old also. One more year left with me to practice as an insolvency professional. I am also an IP, an RP. I am a double engineer. I have done my civil engineering and also AMI in mechanical. I am registered valuer for both land and building and plant and machinery. I am with almost all the banks as registered valuer. I am also techno-economic viability agent and lenders independent engineer, which Mr. Rishi Shah was mentioning. And I'm an ex-banker. I had a stint of 15 years experience in a national bank. Well, I also attempted to complete my cost accountancy. I'm not, but I'm enrolled with ICMAI. I'm a lawyer by qualification, right? Now, with this brief, I would like to get into some of my live experience exposures to valuation, especially in the case of an NCLT and also a few bank valuations. I will rush through because of paucity of time. We have to capsulate, fortify everything in 15 minutes time. So I may be a little fast in my delivery. I may not be able to answer any doubt and all. I'll only share a monologue rather. Innovative Industries, I don't believe in confidentiality. It's the very first account, first insolvency case referred to Supreme Court of India, the first judgment in IBC, represented by two great legal stalwarts, Abhishek Manu Singhvi and Harish Salve. Singhvi Saab representing the borrower and Harish Salve representing the COC, that is the corporate, the bankers. As usual, in any other insolvency case, in NCLT case, you don't get all the documents on the plate readily available. Things are very ideal, to speak. Get me this document, sale deed, FAR, all those things. It is very wishful. I would say wishful because I'm not negative, I'm positive. It's very difficult to expect everything to be on the plate when you go and approach. Even the poor RP. I call the RP poor because I'm also an RP. I work on both the sides of the table as an RV and RP. He has just entered the array scenario a few days back. The greatest source of information is either the bankers, COC, if they have a mortgage deed and other things, or perhaps whatever is left over there in the company when you enter and visit and dig out the records, and nothing else. Now here in this particular case, we don't have documents of title of goods readily available. We asked the bankers, it's a consortium, leader is someone else. The actual banker who filed under Section 7 was not the leader of the consortium. Again, we have to go to the other member of the consortium, their mortgage deed, very tough, let's be very clear. The turnaround time is completing the valuation and the date of valuation. Again, there are other aspects. I don't want to go into the legality. There are some sources which you should stretch your mind and look out for in case you do not get the documents readily for the asking from the records of the corporate debtor's office or with the bank readily available. The first and foremost, please find out the name of the auditor and the latest audited balance sheet. Latest, when I say latest, can be 6 years old or 8 years old. Please find out the auditor, definitely very high regard for CS, would not be able to sign unless they have some basic records, especially the fixed assets when they certify. They're not supposed to, they would definitely have it. Well, if they do not have it, there are other authorities with whom the basic immovable properties record will definitely be available. Land and building approval from municipal authorities or land from land record, revenue record office, revenue office. It's not difficult to dig it out. Once you go under the banner of an RV or an RP, you will get it, especially in other states. I was lucky enough to get from all the Gram Panchayat and also from municipal corporation and also from auditor's office. This source, please do not undermine. Even if you have documents, it is morally our duty to verify the veracity, genuineness of the documents. It's necessary of late. When you measure through GPS, some gentleman, some banker was telling geotagging. Geotagging is already done by valuer. Nowadays, no bank will accept any valuation without longitude, latitude specified, without a survey mapping done as to how to approach the property. He has to give the route map, how to access, identify the property. The identification of the appropriate property is a must before you value the asset. It is already there in vogue. So the land records, the municipal corporation records are the most vital, reliable sources because it is government records to decipher the exact quantity and the locality and the identity of the place of the asset. It is necessary, boss. It's necessary to do it. In the case of Innovative Industries, the plots were there, the records were there. Most of them were on lease basis, or most of them have been gone on acquisition for road widening. The records and the boundaries may reveal a 30-year-old story, but the actual reality when you go to value after duly identifying is a different ball game altogether. Only a civil engineer will be able to appreciate, understand, recognize and acknowledge this. The third important thing, be very friendly with old employees of the company, the defaulting CD, corporate debtor. They will be the most important source of information. Well, it is not always possible for us to extensively or intensively rely on their versions, but they will definitely give you very, very valuable clues. यार ये फैक्ट्री कितना दिन से चल रहा है, मशीनरी कभी लिया? I don't think you will have any other source. Even the promoter, corporate debtor, director may not much help you because he's already in agony of having lost the ownership. Right? The third important source, please look out for insurance policy. Please look out for insurance policy. The insurance company would not have insured the assets unless they have seen something on that, the make, the model, the purchase price, etc., etc. Let us be very, very clear about it. And no banker would have ever advanced any funds unless they are insured. Previously, there used to be insurance agents. Insurance companies used to be only 4 people. But now today there are many insurance companies and the bankers have formed consortium with insurance companies. Nowadays, you don't see insurance agents. Only bankers insure their own assets with their consortium, who are the insuring agent. Correct? And these are the 3 sources by which you can confirm, cross-check, correlate the veracity of various documents, which again may not be always available to yourself. There is something or other missing. Approved plan, completion certificate may not be available every time. Machine, make, model, serial number may not be available at all times. I can give an example of Pari Kaliminex. It's a WAPI based or Silvassa based unit. We could get no information about the machinery, make, model, invoice, nothing. We got hold of the old employees. We cajoled him a lot. We took dinner. We gave him dinner to extract maximum data input from him. We went to the insurance company. And then we could manage to decipher something. Even then we were not happy. But ultimately, I'll tell you, the valuation is, I look at it as a seva. I don't want to talk about the fee which is payable or which is being paid for the services rendered by a valuer. I'm a very passionate emotional valuer. And we work under a lot of stress. We can't blame the COC, we can't blame the RP. They are also under strain and a lot of stress while lending. They have their own typical turnaround time and pressure from higher ups. They have their own target. They also contribute to the economy. It doesn't mean that you should throw to winds the basic rules. No, I'm not saying. Mr. Shivaji correctly told, without visit, giving a valuation is an atrocious, unpardonable sin. Nobody should even think of it. Forget about doing it. You should not think of doing any valuation without visiting. I agree. But even after visiting, without a record to do valuation is all the same. You have to stretch and strain a lot to get across to the appropriate documents before forming the opinion of identification of the asset, quantification of the area, its useful life, economic life, and physical life of the asset in the absence of records. And then assign the value and expect the RP or the lender to realize and then try to mitigate the claims or liabilities which they are owing. I think the valuer's role bears a lot of sanctity. It's a very noble job. If he goes wrong, in valuer's bill, it is declared as dirty value. It could lead the whole economic scenario astray. It will be misleading the whole game. And he has to stretch a lot to find out many data. Another thing, machinery. Go to the maintenance people. Usually there will be an annual maintenance contract. Where it is crane or furnace, there will be somebody to do the maintenance. They will have all the records about the machinery. It may not bear the nameplate, serial number, year of manufacture, model, etc. But definitely they will be able to tell this machinery was giving this particular problem. This boiler was having its leakage. It was having its own thermal loss, line loss. Its efficiency was so much. They will be able to give you details if you talk to them politely, modestly, take them to confidence and gather the data. And these are all the vital clues which will make you pave way for you to definitely arrive at a reasonably accurate value. Again, valuation is a subjective opinion. Nobody on earth can specifically value the asset. I'm sure you can go to the basics. A value is different from cost and price. Cost is a reality. Price is also a reality. The amount at which there can be a sale or purchase transaction. But value is only a guess or an estimate. It is always a subjective opinion. And in that subjective opinion, whether tangible assets or intangible, if you don't have the proper underlying records, genuine records, to base your assumption or guess or estimate, knowingly or unknowingly, you will end up with some very genuine, unintentional, accidental lapse on your part, which could mislead you and many others into untoward, undesirable areas. I don't want to go into details. A valuer is at a very high risk to declare his value. You may say, yeah, itna farak, 10%, 25%, go to the third valuer. Easier said than done. But a lot of efforts and exercise which one has to undertake before arriving at that guess, at that estimate, is a tough thing to go by. The last one, outright ownership assets, land, building, machinery. Yes. If we have all appropriate record, it is easy to arrive at a value. What about lease to one? Lease rights. Lease rights, valuation of lease rights of a lessor and lessee. The land will be on lease basis, building will be constructed on by the lessee and value that. Tough exercise. Not only from legal point of view, but even from accounting standards point of view. It's a tough exercise for a valuer because ultimately the proof of the pudding is in the eating. When you want to sell the asset, you must really fetch the value which you declare as close to that as possible. If your valuation doesn't help the recipient, the service seeker, to arrive at some logical conclusion of some good consequence, it's of no use. It is of no consequence. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. The most important, toughest, most ticklish, crucial, critical valuation of an asset is spares. Consumable spares used in the production. Friends, you are all cost accountant, most of you, or engineers, plant and machinery or land and building. The consumable spare is neither a current asset nor a fixed asset. I would say so because I'm not an accountant, I am an engineer. The consumable spares are not realized in the course of business, just like fixed assets. At the same time, they are not counted as fixed assets, acknowledged as fixed assets because they have a very short shelf life. They will be consumed. Example, mold, jigs. Okay, they're all consumable. Normally, these spares are made by the end user, the customer, and financed by them or designed by them. Either the supplier will make it or the end user will make it. Either of them may finance. It will have a specific short life. For example, in a forging press, the forge mold will have only 100 or 1000 forges. It will work. After that, its use is only scrap value. It will not have any use. But when you want to make a mold, it will have 2 crores. After 50, say 1000 presses, it will have only scrap value. What is the scrap value definition? The reusable material content value, kilo ka bhav. But when you make it, it will be in lakhs. You don't know who is the owner of the particular spare, particular mold. Who has made it? Is it the customer? Who is the owner? Because you are valuing the assets of the owner, the borrower customer. If he's not the owner, you can't give that value. It will not, even if it appears in balance sheet, you're not supposed to give that value for that particular customer in an insolvency case. Friends, I'm sharing this. This was in the case of Innoventive. The value of molds, jigs, and consumable spares are 40% of the total value of the business. There was a compulsion to have the third valuer. Fortunately, I happened to be the third valuer. And these molds value, the spares value are amortized. If 1,000 presses, the mold can be used. If 600 presses are already over, the value will be only 40%. Because it will not have any value. Pro rata commensurately you have to assign the value. It's a big accounting exercise. It is not a mere depreciation exercise. And for every machinery, you should always have a degree of obsolescence, a stigma value, depending on its efficiency. Efficiency, what I mean is whether the machinery is in its economic life or useful life or physical life. I hope you know the definition of these three lives. Economic life is the one in the beginning when it is new and nascent. It's like a new Maruti car, it will give 15, 16 kilometers per hour average per liter of diesel or petrol. After 10 years, it will start giving you 10 to 12. After 15 years, chalti ka naam gaadi, right? It will be just, you will be only pushing it, you will be using it as a museum piece. In the useful life, you have to spend a lot of money in repairs and maintenance. Perhaps you may not incur so much during economic life. But in physical life, you will daily require 4% to push the car. Then only it will stop. Correct? So the efficiency of the machinery matters as far as the valuation of the asset is concerned. So friends, the extent of maintenance of machinery will be of two types. These maintenance records, you should go to the annual maintenance contractors, the routine maintenance and the preventive maintenance. These records also will reflect the quality and the extent of value which you may assign to the machinery. Because any buyer, any resolution applicant, or even if it is a DRT sale, any surface sale, will always look into all these aspects, and they will also evaluate, arrive at a value, how much the asset is worth. And that is the value RP should be able to find, and that is the value at which the asset can be realized. And unless the assets are realized, the claims or outstanding liability cannot be settled. Forget about the confidentiality, the rules, whether COC should discuss, whether they should appoint RV. I am not going to enter into that area. Some banker was telling me there has to be a beautiful interaction between COC and RV. I wish the days come soon. In fact, it is the COC, as far as ground reality is concerned, they only appoint the valuers. The RP cannot appoint any valuer, although the rule provides for RP to appoint the valuer, but RP cannot appoint unless he gets a nod, green signal from the COC for absorbing the COC cost. L1, L1, L1. When you have L1, perhaps you will get that standard, that quality of valuation. When an RP is appointed, there is no L1, sir. But when an RV is appointed, always L1 is cared for. It's a reality. And the turnaround time also the banker should really give away with, because the more you pressurize, the haste makes waste. The famous proverb goes in. I think I have overstretched my time. Gupta ji, thank you very much. And I congratulate Dr. S.K. Gupta for one of his most notable exercise. I'm not against bankers. I was also a banker. The code of ethics for COC. You gave a lecture. I distinctly recall. The earlier it comes into force, the better.
Sure, sure.
Because you define the code of ethics for everyone else on earth.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Nothing against, no grumbling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so
I
much.
have exceeded my limit. My apologies to you. I have
Thank you.
shared my hard-earned experience with all of you. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
If you have any question, kindly, I'll be glad to answer. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. KS Ayyadurai, for your very, very lively, enlightening, and very, very experiential interactive session with the participants. Interactive because they might not have spoken a word to interact with you, but in their heart of hearts, in their thought process, you have evoked a lot of new feelings and you have evoked a lot of new thought processes, and that's how it became interactive, even though there were not even a single word uttered from the participant side. So thank you so very much, all the guests and the participants for joining this webinar. Yes, sir.
Dr. Gupta, I have some say after listening from
Yes,
all
sir.
the
Yes, sir. Sure,
esteemed
sir.
speakers. I could understand that the much talked about the valuations has taken a paradigm shift after this IBC, and in the banking sector also the whole credit department is taking a new view. Most of the credit officers, analysts, they are scared of the valuation on valuers. In fact, certain issues have been discussed by Mr. J.D. Sharma or Mr. Adurai. Actually, he has given some insights. Yes, but one thing, it's clear that both the bankers and both the valuers, they should have a trust amongst each other. The trust
Absolutely.
should be generated.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it would be difficult for anybody to continue this. I'm telling you, I have also got some experience I can share with you, but I think time is not enough for us. But my request to you, let us start one thing, that today's discussions has prompted us to think, let us have a valuation month. Let us have a valuation month. Throughout the month, we shall be sensitizing both the bankers, both the stakeholders, both the professionals. Everybody should participate. Let us have also some, already you have started. You have already done many of things you have done. But let us do it very holistically, so that ultimately at the end we can reach to the unreached, because many bankers are not aware of the, nowadays the valuation professionals from this particular institute, RBO, they're much more, I can take a claim that these valuation professionals are different from the, at least 10 years back, the valuers, there's a huge difference, because nowadays the valuers are very much, they are mathematically, scientifically, they are doing their valuations. Bankers are not aware, perhaps, to that extent, because, bankers have got the age-old concept of that valuation process, what we did. And in fact, it is not possible for a banker also to go into the nitty-gritty of the valuation process. They believe in the, the credentials of the firm. They believe in the credentials of the valuers. And they also have their own system of appraising the valuers. Appraisal of valuers also they do, because they have got some system. In that system, they keep the record of the valuers. And if there is any, adverse remarks about the valuers, they immediately keep in their, they have got system of depaneling of the valuers also. I have seen in my life, many of the valuers have been depaneled from the banking system because of their, I don't want to say here, but of course, this has been uttered by many of the esteemed speakers, that ethics is one of the very important factors. And here, I understand that after this Basel capital norms, when the NPA and prudential accounting norms, especially, the risk-weighted assets, these are all depending upon the valuation of the collaterals also. So let us start with this and let us continue with this. I think in the months to come, the years to come, maybe our RVOs will be showing the roadmap to the bankers and other financial institutions about our RVO. With this, I'm really grateful. I have enjoyed a lot in this particular program, and let us do this sort of things and repeat this sort of things.
Sure, sir.
Maybe today's session will ignite more and more, enthusiasm amongst the valuers to learn, unlearn, and relearn the whole aspects of the valuation. With this, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So with this, we conclude this program, and we thank all the guests, all the participants, all the speakers for making this program a very, very interesting, knowledgeable, and useful program for all of us. Look forward to meeting all of you all over again in our future programs also. Thank you very much. Good evening. Namaskar.
Namaskar.